Many people believe that how far someone can go in life depends on how much pressure they can handle. If you can endure stress, work long hours, take criticism, and keep going without breaking, you're seen as strong. That idea feels reasonable. And in a way, it makes sense, because that's exactly how concrete works. Concrete is incredibly strong under compression. You can pile weight on top of it and it holds. That's why buildings, bridges, and roads rely on it. From the outside, it looks solid, dependable, almost unbreakable. People are often the same. Some people are great at carrying weight. They stay calm when things get tough. They don't complain. They push through pressure, deadlines, responsibility. No matter how heavy things get, they keep standing. From the outside, they look steady, reliable, tough. But here's the problem. Concrete has a fatal weakness. It's terrible under tension. Pull it from both ends and it cracks easily, not because it isn't hard enough, but because that's not the kind of force it was built to handle. People work the same way. Those who seem strongest are often just strong in one direction. They can handle external pressure, but that doesn't mean they can handle internal tearing. Think about emotional strain, long-term suppression, never saying what you feel, never being understood. On the surface, everything looks fine, but inside, something is slowly being pulled apart. Or think about broken trust. You invest deeply in a person, a path, a belief, and when that collapses, the damage hits far harder than any workload ever could. Or losing direction. You've been enduring, grinding, pushing forward, only to realize you've been walking the wrong road. That realization alone can break people. Most breakdowns don't happen at the peak of stress. They happen at moments like these. Being denied by someone you trusted, emotions you've buried for years suddenly exploding, or realizing that what you've been holding on to doesn't actually hold you back. That moment is like pulling concrete apart. It looks solid, but it has no flexibility. There's a harsh truth here. Your strengths determine how high you can climb. Your weaknesses determine how hard you fall. How far a person goes in life isn't decided by how much pressure they can take. It's decided whether they've reinforced their most dangerous weak spots. If all you ever train is endurance, all you're doing is turning yourself into harder concrete, stable on the surface, but with no margin for a change in force. Fixing weaknesses sounds abstract, but it's actually very practical. If you're good at enduring pressure, can you also express your emotions? If you're driven and hardworking, do you have stable, supportive relationships? If you're used to tolerating everything, do you have anywhere to release the load? Why do engineers put steel inside concrete? Not because concrete isn't strong, but because they know forces never come from just one direction. Life works the same way. You won't face pressure forever without tension, loss, or emotional strain. The people who truly last aren't the ones without weaknesses. They're the ones who know exactly where they're vulnerable and reinforce those areas early. So, don't worship the idea of "I can handle anything." That's just a strength, not protection. The real question is this: when life stops pushing and starts pulling, will you crack or will you bend without breaking? That's what decides how far you can really go.
Some things are very strong on their own. Concrete is a good example. It's hard, solid, and capable of carrying heavy loads. On the surface, it looks like it can handle anything. But if you try to build a tall building using concrete alone, it's actually risky. Not because concrete isn't strong, but because it's fighting on its own. Concrete can build upward, not because it becomes harder, but because it's willing to hold steel inside it. The steel isn't visible, it's completely wrapped in concrete. Yet that combination is what makes the structure safe. People work the same way. When we're younger, many of us believe in one idea above all else: doing everything ourselves, being tough, strong-willed, carrying everything alone, not asking for help, not depending on anyone, not wanting to be slowed down. In the short term, this kind of person often moves fast. While others hesitate, they push forward. While others need support, they keep grinding. But moving fast doesn't mean moving safely. People who are hard on the outside are often fragile in their structure. Not emotionally fragile, but structurally vulnerable. When they fall apart, it's rarely because they lack ability. It's because there's no buffer, no backup, no one there to catch them. No one to share the emotional load, no one to question their decisions. And when their judgment slips, everything slips with it. Like a block of concrete without steel, one strong pull can cause a crack. Mature people tend to move differently, not because they've become stronger, but because they've realized something important. Doing everything alone is unsafe. They start to understand that not everything should be carried alone. Not every decision should be made solo. Not every pressure should stay inside. So they begin to build combinations. Someone pushes forward, someone keeps things stable. Someone sees opportunity, someone sees risk. Someone feels deeply, someone stays calm. If you look closely, people who last a long time usually have steel around them. Not a crowd, but a few key people. A friend who pulls them back to reality, a partner who dares to disagree, someone's advice they actually listen to. These people aren't always comfortable to be around. They're not as hard. They slow you down, they question you, they challenge you. But they also prevent you from breaking when things pull in the wrong direction. Many people think maturity means, I can handle more, I'm more independent, I don't need anyone. In reality, true maturity often looks like the opposite. It's knowing where you shouldn't push alone, what requires cooperation, which risks you can't afford to carry by yourself. Just like concrete doesn't need to become steel, it only needs to learn how to hold steel. Working with others isn't weakness, it's respect for reality. Forces in a real world never come from just one direction. There's pressure, tension, sudden shifts, things you can't predict. No matter how hard you are, you can't resist everything alone. That's why this idea matters. Maturity isn't about being stronger. It's about knowing who you should build with. You don't need everyone. You just need the people who reinforce your structure. When you start caring about whether your structure is safe instead of whether you can endure more, you've already changed. That's not becoming soft. That's becoming stable.
A lot of things only really matter when you can't see them. Concrete is a perfect example. Right after it's poured, it just looks like a gray, sloppy mess. Soft, shapeless. No one would look at it and think, this is going to hold up a building. A few hours later, the surface starts to harden. You step on it and it feels solid enough. It looks done. But the truth is, at that point, concrete is still weak. What actually makes concrete strong isn't the surface drying out, it's what's happening inside. Deep within, a chemical reaction is slowly taking place. Tiny crystals are growing, spreading, locking everything together. Quietly, gradually, no drama. That's where the real strength comes from. People aren't that different. We're easily distracted by visible progress. A new job title, more money, recognition, clear results. But the things that really decide how far someone can go usually don't show up like that. If you look closely at people who are genuinely solid, not just flashy, you'll notice something interesting. There's almost always a stretch of time in their lives where, from the outside, nothing seems to be happening. No big breakthroughs, no obvious wins. Sometimes they even look stuck or overlooked. But those periods are often the most important ones. That's when they're quietly building fundamentals, fixing how they think, learning how to manage emotions, understanding people better, figuring out when to push and when to hold back. None of that looks impressive from the outside,
Sometimes even they can't clearly explain what's changing. But when real pressure shows up, the difference becomes obvious. A lot of people feel anxious because they only trust progress they can see immediately. They put in effort today and expect results tomorrow. They give something time, don't see a payoff, and start doubting the whole direction. But most meaningful growth simply doesn't work that way. Just like concrete, if the surface dries fast, but the internal reaction is incomplete, the strength is fake. It looks solid, but it isn't. The same goes for people. Some people look strong early on, confident, fast-moving, decisive, bold, but their internal structure hasn't fully formed yet. When real complexity hits, cracks appear fast. Others don't stand out much at first. They're quiet, steady, not in a hurry to prove anything, but they're building from the inside, layer by layer. When opportunity finally comes, they don't rely on a sudden burst. They simply stand there, stable. What really separates people isn't how impressive they look on stage. It's what they've built during the time when no one was watching. Did you stay patient during the days that felt like nothing was moving? Did you keep going when no one praised you? Did you keep working when you were the only one who knew why it mattered? Those periods feel like stagnation. In reality, they're internal construction. And that's exactly why they're so easy to quit. They're quiet. They're boring. They don't give you quick rewards. You put in effort and get silence back. You grow, but no one notices. Sometimes people even ask, "What are you even doing?" But if you make it through that phase, a lot of things later on become easier. Not because life gets simpler, but because your internal structure is strong enough to handle complexity. Concrete doesn't fail because it's slow. It fails when it's forced to carry weight before it's ready. People are the same. Being pushed too early into something you're not internally prepared for doesn't make you stronger. It creates long-term cracks. So those stretches of time that look like no progress aren't wasted. They're just storing the change somewhere you can't see yet. And when the moment comes that you need to stand firm, those quiet days will return the results all at once. If you're in a phase right now where nothing seems to be happening, no feedback, no momentum, no applause, it doesn't mean you've stopped. You might just be on the quiet road where real strength is built. And more often than not, that's the road that decides who actually makes it to the end.
A lot of people instinctively believe one thing: faster is better. Succeed early, mature quickly, get stable as soon as possible. It feels like if you do that, you're already halfway ahead in life. But in real life, many of the biggest problems actually come from moving too fast. Concrete is a great example and a very counterintuitive one. If concrete hardens too quickly, say because the temperature is too high or the water evaporates too fast, the surface sets almost immediately. It looks solid, strong, reliable. But to someone who understands it, that's a red flag. Because it usually means the internal hydration reaction didn't have enough time to finish. The structure inside hasn't fully formed, but everything has already been locked in place. That kind of concrete might look fine at first, but over time, tiny cracks start to appear. Its ability to carry load weakens. It doesn't fail right away, but sooner or later, problems show up. People work the same way. When someone is pushed to succeed fast, grow up fast, or handle everything early, it can look impressive from the outside. They make money early. They take on responsibility early. They're put in important positions early. But if their internal growth hasn't kept pace, that speed becomes risky. You'll often see people who moved very fast but feel extremely unstable inside. Their emotions explode easily. Relationships fall apart under pressure. A small change in direction makes them panic. It's not that they didn't work hard. It's that many things never had time to settle. Growth isn't something you can rush. Some abilities simply need time, judgment, boundaries, the ability to absorb failure, a real understanding of people. You can read about these things, hear advice, watch others do them,
but you can't shortcut the process. They only form through repeated experience, adjustment, and trial and error. And yet, the world constantly pushes us to hurry. People around you are moving ahead. Your peers seem to be running faster. Social media is full of success stories. It's easy to start thinking, am I too slow? Am I falling behind? Should I push myself harder? But here's the problem. Speed doesn't equal stability. Some people reach high positions very early, but the ground under them is hollow. They look successful, but they live with constant anxiety. What if I can't hold this? That state alone drains a person. The people who last tend to allow themselves to move slower, not because they lack ambition, but because they refuse to skip stages. When it's time to build foundations, they build them properly. When it's time to make mistakes, they actually make them. When it's time to take losses, they take them fully. They're not afraid of being slow. They're afraid of being shallow. Concrete doesn't fail because it takes time. It fails when it's asked to carry weight before the reaction inside is complete. People are the same. If you're forced to carry more than your internal structure can support, even if you manage to hold on, long-term damage often follows. Fear of success, extreme sensitivity to failure, the urge to escape whenever things feel uncertain. These issues rarely explode immediately. They show up later. So no, moving faster isn't automatically an advantage. The real advantage is this: wherever you stand, your internal structure actually matches that position. You don't need to be faster than everyone else. You just need to make sure the place you're standing is one you can truly stand on. If you feel slow right now, it might not mean you're falling behind. It might mean you're doing something most people don't have the patience for, letting your inside grow solid. And when the moment comes that you truly need to rely on yourself, you'll realize that growth, protected by time, is the most dependable kind there is.
A lot of people grow up believing one simple idea: if you're good enough, you'll shine anywhere. If you have real ability, real talent, real effort, the environment shouldn't matter that much. Good material is good material. But concrete doesn't work that way. And honestly, neither do people. In concrete, the same exact mix, same cement, same sand, same water ratio can turn out completely differently depending on the environment. Temperature, humidity, wind, even how fast moisture evaporates can change everything. Too dry and the internal reaction stops early. Too hot and it hardens too fast. Too cold and the reaction slows or freezes. On paper, nothing is wrong with the material, but the final result can still be weak. People are exactly the same. You can take two people with very similar abilities, work ethic, and intelligence, put them into different environments, and a few years later, their lives look nothing alike. One grows steadily, gains confidence, gets better over time. The other struggles constantly, doubts themselves, and starts believing they're the problem. From the outside, it looks like a difference in capability. From the inside, it's often just a difference in environment. Some environments bring out your strengths. Others constantly press on your weaknesses. There are places where being quiet means you're invisible, and there are places where being quiet means you're trusted. There are environments that reward speed, aggression, and self-promotion. Others value patience, reliability, and depth. Neither is right or wrong, but put the wrong person in the wrong setting and they'll slowly start to break. What makes this dangerous is that people usually blame themselves first. They think, why can't I adapt? Why does everyone else seem fine? Why am I always tired, frustrated, or stuck? Over time, that turns into self-doubt, then into self-criticism, then into the belief that you're simply not good enough. But very often, the problem isn't you. It's that the environment is draining you instead of supporting you. Concrete doesn't argue with its surroundings. If the humidity is wrong, it doesn't try harder. It just ends up with micro cracks inside. People, however, will keep forcing themselves. They'll push through exhaustion. They'll suppress discomfort. They'll normalize stress that shouldn't be normal. And that's how burnout happens, not suddenly, but quietly. You might be capable, but constantly distracted. Talented, but never given room to focus. Responsible, but surrounded by chaos. In those conditions, even strong people start to underperform. The opposite is also true. Put someone in the right environment and their growth accelerates naturally. They don't suddenly become smarter or more disciplined, they just stop fighting unnecessary resistance. They receive clearer feedback. They feel safer making mistakes. They're encouraged in the direction they're already good at. That's when people say things like, "I don't know why, but things just started clicking." It wasn't magic, it was alignment. This is why changing environments, jobs, cities, teams, even social circles can completely change a person's trajectory. Not because running away solves problems, but because staying in the wrong environment slowly erodes you. A bad environment doesn't just block progress, it changes how you see yourself. You start shrinking your ambitions, lowering your expectations, avoiding situations where you might be judged again. That's not weakness, that's a natural response to constant pressure. Concrete exposed to harsh conditions doesn't suddenly become worse material, it just can't express its full strength. People deserve the same understanding. If you've been trying hard for a long time and nothing seems to work, if you feel like you're always compensating, adjusting, proving, it might be time to ask a different question. Not what's wrong with me, but what kind of environment am I in? Are you constantly reacting instead of building? Are you surrounded by noise when you need focus? Are you rewarded for the things you're bad at and ignored for the things you're good at? Sometimes the bravest thing isn't pushing harder, it's stepping back and changing where you stand. Because performance is never just about material, it's about conditions. And recognizing that isn't making excuses, it's understanding structure. So if things feel heavier than they should, if your effort never seems to translate into results, remember this. It might not be that you're not strong enough. It might just be that the environment you're in was never meant for you to fully set, harden, and hold your weight.
A lot of things look finished once they seem to have set. Concrete is one of them. Once it hardens on the surface, people assume that's it. Job done. The building can go up, the bridge can open, everything looks complete. But anyone who actually understands concrete knows that's not the end at all. It's just the beginning. For a very long time, concrete is still changing on the inside. The reaction between cement and water doesn't stop, it just slows down. Tiny crystal structures keep forming, filling gaps, tightening the internal network. From the outside, nothing seems different, but inside, the material is quietly getting stronger. Some concrete is actually much stronger years after it's poured than it was when the building first opened. Not because anything was added later, but because time itself did the work. People work the same way. A lot of people ask, when is someone considered mature? Is it when they have a stable job? When they stop losing their temper? When they don't panic as much anymore? But if you really look at people who feel stable and grounded, it's hard to point to a single moment when they suddenly became that way. They didn't wake up one day fully formed. They became who they are through long periods that didn't look dramatic at all. They failed and didn't collapse. They made wrong choices and learned to carry the consequences. They were hit by reality more than once and slowly figured out what's worth holding on to and what isn't. Most of that didn't happen in big, visible moments. It happened quietly,
on the way home from work, late at night replaying conversations, in the slow process of making the same mistake, noticing it and adjusting just a little next time. From the outside, it looks like they were always pretty steady, but that steadiness was built layer by layer over time. A lot of anxiety comes from wanting to lock ourselves in too early. In your 20s, you feel pressure to know who you'll be forever. In your early 30s, you start wondering if it's already too late to change. Once life looks stable on the surface, you assume growth must be over. That mindset traps people. If concrete were treated as finished the moment it hardened, its long-term strength would be underestimated. When people label themselves too early, they do the same thing to their own potential. Real change is rarely dramatic. It's not a sudden awakening, not a total personality shift, not a single moment where everything makes sense. It's noticing that the same problem doesn't shake you as much anymore, that you pause before reacting, that when something is uncomfortable, you stay instead of running. At the time, those changes feel insignificant, but over years, they add up to a completely different person. Some people look strong early on, sharp edges, fast decisions, no hesitation. They seem hard. But if there's no ongoing internal growth, long-term pressure starts to crack them. Emotional blow-ups, repeating conflicts, growing bitterness. Others don't stand out at first. They move slower, speak less, progress quietly. But they don't stop growing inside. They adjust their thinking, build tolerance, learn where their limits actually are. Years later, those are often the people who last. Just like concrete, it's not about who's hardest at the beginning. It's about who keeps strengthening over time. Maturity was never meant to be rushed. When people try to mature too fast, they usually just learn how to perform. They say the right things, they look calm, they hide their reactions. But inside, nothing has fully settled. Pressure isn't handled, it's postponed. People who are truly stable are surprisingly patient with themselves. They don't rush to define their entire life. They don't panic about proving they're enough. They don't immediately judge where they are now as a failure. They understand that some things only become real abilities when time is allowed to do its work. You'll notice something about people like this. They aren't easily shaken by short-term outcomes. A single failure doesn't destroy their confidence. A low period doesn't make them question their entire existence. Not because they're more optimistic, but because they understand this one thing. Strength can keep growing. Like concrete, today might look almost the same as yesterday, but over 10 or 20 years, the difference is enormous. So, if right now you feel stuck, if your life looks stable but unsatisfying, if growth feels slow or invisible, that doesn't automatically mean something is wrong. You might be in a phase where internal change outweighs external progress. Nothing flashy is happening, but your judgment, resilience, and boundaries are quietly reorganizing. This stage is easy to misunderstand. Others can't see it, and it's easy to doubt yourself while you're in it. But it's often the foundation for a much steadier future. People who can carry real weight in life were never finished products. They're structures that kept tightening, repairing, and adjusting over time. They look calm, not because they avoided chaos, but because chaos didn't break them. So, if you're still changing, still recalibrating, still learning yourself slowly, you're not behind. You're simply still in the process of becoming stronger. The people who truly hold their ground in life are the ones who grew that stability, slowly.
A lot of people see the word crack and instantly think it's over. Everything is going to fall apart. But anyone who's worked with concrete or really understands it knows something important. Tiny cracks don't mean instant failure. In fact, most concrete structures develop small cracks at some point in their life. Temperature changes, shrinkage from drying, normal vibrations, even everyday use, all of these can create tiny fissures. It's part of the material, not necessarily a sign of poor quality. The real danger isn't that cracks appear, it's when cracks get out of control. If they're ignored, if water seeps in, if the steel inside starts to rust, the internal structure slowly deteriorates. A problem that was once tiny can grow, step by step, until the whole thing is at risk. Humans are exactly the same. A lot of people have this unrealistic idea about stress, trauma, and mental cracks, that if you're strong enough, you shouldn't show damage. The truth is, no one goes through life without cracks. If you're alive, you've been hurt. You've been rejected, betrayed, misunderstood. You've worked hard and failed, cared deeply and been brushed aside. These things leave marks. The problem isn't that you got hurt, it's whether anyone, or even you, has actually dealt with it. Most people start sliding not because of one big disaster. It's from 100 little, "it's fine, I'll deal with it later" moments. On the surface, everything looks fine. They go to work, they laugh with friends, their social media looks perfect, they seem calm and collected. But the things pushed down don't disappear, they just get buried deeper. Over time, strange things happen. Some people explode over minor things. Something tiny triggers a huge emotional reaction. Others look fine, but gradually become numb. No excitement, no anger, barely any feeling at all. And sometimes the body goes first. Insomnia, chest tightness, stomach aches, racing heart, chronic fatigue. Tests come back normal, but the person still feels off. This isn't magic. It's what happens when cracks inside aren't addressed. They start affecting other areas. The real danger isn't that you were hurt, it's that you've been pretending you weren't. Pretending you're fine is, in a way, losing control. Cracks aren't being actively managed, they're being ignored. You don't know how big they are or when they might suddenly grow. Truly stable people aren't never damaged. They acknowledge it. This hurt me. I'm struggling right now. I need a moment. I need to talk to someone. I need to process. They're not emotional or weak. They just have boundaries. They know when it's time to fix things instead of just holding them in. It's like good engineering. Maintenance isn't about waiting for the bridge to collapse. It's about noticing cracks early, reinforcing, redirecting, and strengthening. Many people misunderstand what it means to deal with emotions. It doesn't always mean crying your eyes out or seeing a therapist. Sometimes just acknowledging it is enough. Acknowledging that a relationship hurt you. Acknowledging that failure knocked you down. Acknowledging that right now you're not as strong as you'd like to be. Once you stop denying the cracks, they start losing their power to harm. The truly mature handle cracks calmly. They don't rush to make everything perfect, but they never ignore them. They know cracks themselves aren't dangerous. What's dangerous is leaving them unattended. Because of this, these people are actually more durable. You'll notice they don't suddenly collapse. Pressure has been distributed, released, and repaired along the way. So if you have cracks right now, emotional, relational, or even self-doubt, it doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're broken. It just means you're carrying real weight. What you need to do isn't pretend you're fine. It's start taking responsibility for those cracks. Notice them, accept them, deal with them. As long as the cracks are under control, they won't destroy you. On the contrary, they'll show you where to grow stronger. The people who truly fall are never the ones who've been hurt. They're the ones who pretend they've never been hurt at all.
You know how sometimes something looks solid, but you just have this gut feeling it's not really safe? Concrete works the same way. On the outside, it can look perfectly smooth, hard, unbreakable. You'd think, yeah, that thing is strong, totally reliable. But if there are tiny voids inside, microscopic air pockets, small gaps where the crystals didn't fill in completely, the structure isn't as safe as it seems. It's fragile in ways you can't see from the surface. Humans are exactly the same. We see people walking around with confidence, standing tall, speaking loudly, making decisions that look fearless. They seem invincible. You might even think that person's life must be rock solid. But appearances can be deceiving. Inside, there might be a lot going on that no one sees. Insecurity, unprocessed trauma, anxiety, self-doubt, cracks that aren't visible to the outside world. These internal gaps don't stop you from functioning day to day, but they make the structure of who you are more fragile than it seems. Real safety, real stability is never about what you look like on the outside. It's about the internal architecture. How well your inner crystals have grown, how well your core can handle pressure, stress, or unexpected shocks. Think about a building. A contractor can make a concrete pillar look perfect, smooth surface, straight edges, flawless gray. But if the mix wasn't right, if it wasn't properly cured, if tiny voids formed inside, over time, with enough stress, that pillar could crack, crumble, even fail completely. And the scary part is, you wouldn't have seen it coming. On the outside, it looked fine, solid, safe. People work the same way. You meet someone who seems confident. They're the type who takes charge in meetings, speaks loudly in social settings, maybe even seems unbothered by challenges. But maybe they grew up in a household where emotional support was inconsistent. Maybe they got hurt in relationships and never fully processed it. Maybe they learned early on to act strong because showing weakness wasn't allowed. All those things are like tiny voids in the concrete. You can't see them, but they're there. And here's the key. Those internal gaps don't usually collapse immediately. People don't fall apart the first time something goes wrong. They compensate, they adjust, they push through. The surface stays hard, keeps looking solid, but with enough pressure, stress at work, tension in a relationship, repeated disappointments, the cracks slowly start to widen. It's not weakness to have gaps inside. Everyone has them. What matters is whether you're aware of them and whether you take care of them. Most people think they need to look strong all the time. Confidence, self-assurance, assertiveness, they're all good, but they're surface level. They can mask the gaps for a while, but they don't fix them. And if the inside isn't addressed, eventually something will expose the weak points. Real security, real resilience comes from the inside. It comes from acknowledging where you're hollow or vulnerable and actively working to fill it in. That might mean processing past trauma, learning to manage anxiety, building healthy boundaries, developing self-compassion, or simply giving yourself time to mature emotionally. It's the same as proper concrete curing. You can't just pour it, smooth it over, and call it a day. If the hydration process isn't complete, if the crystal structures don't fully develop internally, you've got a pillar that looks good but could fail under stress. Some people focus too much on the surface. They polish their image, rehearse their confidence, practice their posture, speak in the right tone, or dress the part. And sure, that has value, but it's cosmetic. It doesn't make them truly unshakable. True unshakability, the kind that holds up under pressure, comes from internal density, from filling the gaps you can't see. It's okay if it takes time. Just like concrete continues to strengthen for months, even years after it's poured, people can continue to grow internally long after they've learned to function externally. Here's another way to look at it. If someone seems calm during a crisis, don't assume they're invincible. Look closer. Maybe they've spent years building a resilient internal structure, learning to deal with stress gradually. Or maybe they're holding it together only on the outside, and the first real shock could cause internal fractures. That's why you hear stories of people who seemed perfectly fine suddenly cracking under pressure. They weren't weak, they just hadn't addressed the gaps inside. So, what's the takeaway? Surface strength is not enough. Confidence, charisma, and external competence are like the polished finish of concrete. Nice to look at, but meaningless if the internal structure is hollow. True security comes from internal integrity, from addressing your cracks, filling the voids, and letting the core of who you are strengthen over time. If you start paying attention to your own internal structure, you'll notice patterns, areas where stress leaks through, reactions that feel automatic but unhelpful, emotional gaps that get triggered repeatedly. Those are your internal voids, and the good news is you can fill them. Slowly, methodically, thoughtfully. You don't have to rush. You don't have to pretend they're not there. Every time you consciously work on one of those areas, learning, reflecting, processing, practicing self-care, You're letting your inner concrete cure properly, building a density that lasts. Eventually, you'll notice the difference. Your reactions feel grounded. You handle stress better. You're less reactive. And no matter how chaotic the world outside gets, you feel steady. Not because you're pretending, not because you're polished, but because your internal structure is genuinely solid. So, next time you see someone who seems invincible, or look at yourself and feel you're not there yet, remember this: true safety, true resilience comes from what's inside, not from what's on the surface.
You know, with concrete, there's this rule that sounds simple but is actually huge. It's not about more or less, it's about just the right amount. Too much water and the concrete becomes weak. Too little and it's dry, crumbly, full of voids. The balance is everything. And people, we're exactly the same. Think about pressure in your life. Too much pressure and you're stressed, anxious, maybe even burned out. You can't think clearly. You can't make decisions. You're constantly on edge. But too little pressure and you stagnate. You stop growing. You don't push yourself. You coast, waiting for something to happen. Neither extreme is good. Or take freedom. Give someone unlimited freedom without any boundaries, and they might flounder. Decisions get overwhelming, priorities get messy, and they feel lost. But too little freedom, and it's suffocating. They can't explore, can't learn, can't become themselves. Again, just like concrete, the right balance is what makes things stable. Control, motivation, incentives, it's the same principle. You can't force yourself to change all at once, and you can't leave yourself the chance. There's a sweet spot where the conditions are just right for growth, resilience, and real strength to develop. Concrete is a perfect metaphor here. Imagine pouring concrete with too much water. It's easy to mix, easy to pour, looks smooth, but once it sets, it's soft, weak, filled with tiny voids. It might crack under pressure. It won't hold up when you need it to. On the other hand, pour it too dry and it's impossible to mold. It's brittle, uneven, difficult to work with. Either extreme creates problems. Life works the same way. Too much stress, you crack. Too little, you never reach your potential. Too much freedom, chaos. Too little, suffocation. Too much control, resistance. Too little, confusion. The extremes always backfire. The sweet spot, that just right balance, is where stability comes from. Here's another angle. Think about motivation. Some people think they have to push themselves every second of every day to get ahead, go harder, longer, faster. And yes, drive is important, but too much pressure all the time burns people out. On the other hand, if you never push yourself at all, waiting for life to deliver opportunities, you're stuck. Growth requires a certain mix of challenge and support, stress and rest, balance. Even in relationships, the same rule applies. Too much give and you lose yourself. Too much take and you drain the other person. Balance creates trust, stability, and sustainability. Concrete teaches us another lesson here. Time interacts with balance. Even if you get the water just right, you have to give it time to cure. If you rush it, even a perfectly mixed batch can fail. If you neglect it, even a perfect mix can crack. Humans are like that too. You can have the right environment, the right habits, the right opportunities, but if you try to force growth too quickly or leave it unchecked for too long, cracks appear. Burnout, resentment, frustration, loss of direction. Growth, strength, stability, it's a slow process that requires balance. Balance isn't always exciting. It doesn't make dramatic Instagram posts, but it's what keeps things steady, sustainable, and resilient over the long term. People often admire extremes, those high achievers who push nonstop, or the rebels who throw all caution to the wind. But extremes rarely last. Concrete doesn't survive extremes well either. Think of yourself like a carefully mixed batch of concrete. You need enough water to let your potential flow, enough pressure to give shape, enough support to solidify. Too much or too little in any area and the structure weakens. The funny thing is, finding the balance is often subtle. You don't realize it's off until cracks start to appear. Maybe you feel fatigued emotionally, anxious physically, or frustrated mentally. Maybe relationships feel tense or work projects stall.
Those are the voids forming, the imbalance showing up. The solution isn't extreme action, it's adjusting slowly. It's adding a little support here, taking off a little pressure there. It's patience, awareness, and a steady hand. That's how concrete cures strong, and that's how humans grow strong. So, long-term stability isn't about being extreme. It's not about pushing endlessly or avoiding pressure completely. It's about balance in pressure, in freedom, in control, in effort, in rest. Balance is quiet. Balance isn't flashy, but it's what lasts. And just like concrete, it's what holds up under real-life stress year after year. If you want to be strong, resilient, unshakable, don't aim for extremes. Find your mix, adjust, give it time, let it cure, and you'll see, when it's just right, nothing shakes you because the foundation is solid inside. Long-term stability, whether in concrete or in life, always comes from balance, not extremes.
You know, when concrete fails, it's almost never because of a single mistake. People imagine it like a snap. One wrong move, one crack, and the whole thing collapses. But in reality, it's almost always a combination of small issues piling up over time. Concrete is a perfect example. One batch might have slightly off proportions. Another batch might have slightly weaker aggregates. Maybe the temperature was too high that day, or the humidity was too low. Maybe the workers didn't give it enough time to cure properly. Individually, each of these factors might not cause a disaster, but stack them together, that's when cracks appear, weaknesses multiply, and eventually the structure fails. Life works the same way. People often think collapse, burnout, breakdown, emotional crash is sudden. One big failure, one trauma, one mistake. But the truth is, most of the time, failure is cumulative. It's small stressors, little compromises, ignored warning signs, and unattended cracks piling up quietly. Think about it. Maybe someone's been juggling work, relationships, and personal obligations for years. Maybe they skipped self-care, ignored sleep, or pushed themselves beyond limits without pause. Maybe little disappointments and frustrations kept adding up. No single event was catastrophic, but over time, the weight of all those small things builds, and eventually, the person feels like they're falling apart. It's the same principle as concrete. One tiny air pocket doesn't collapse a pillar. One batch of slightly weaker cement doesn't destroy a wall. But when you combine multiple small imperfections, environmental stress, poor timing, and neglect, that's when failure happens. And here's the tricky part. Like concrete, people often look solid from the outside. Friends, colleagues, even family see someone who's functioning. They go to work, they interact socially, they appear to handle stress perfectly. But inside, the cracks are forming quietly. Micro stresses, tiny emotional voids, small resentments, they accumulate. No one sees them, maybe not even the person themselves, but the internal structure is under pressure. This is why early warning signs matter. Feeling chronically exhausted? That's a crack forming. Getting irritable over minor things? Another small void. Neglecting emotional needs? Piling more weight on an already stressed structure. Individually, none of these would topple someone. Together, they set the stage for collapse. And the scary thing, collapse often seems sudden to outside observers. I can't believe it happened, people say. But for the person experiencing it, it's usually been brewing for a long time. There were hints, signs, little cracks. They just weren't addressed. It's the same with major life stress. Losing a job, ending a relationship, or facing health issues might feel like the last straw. But often, the foundation has already been weakened by months or years of accumulated pressures. The final event just triggers the collapse. Concrete teaches us an important lesson. Maintenance is key. You don't wait until a pillar crumbles to reinforce it. You watch for tiny cracks, you address minor weaknesses, and you keep the structure strong before it's too late. People need the same approach. Check in with yourself. Notice patterns. Recognize when pressure is building. Ask yourself,
Where are the cracks? Where am I weak? And it's okay if they exist. Cracks don't mean failure, they mean attention is needed. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness and repair. One more thing about concrete. The earlier you detect issues, the easier they are to fix. A small void can be filled. A tiny crack can be reinforced. But once the damage spreads, repair becomes difficult, expensive, and sometimes impossible. People aren't different. Early intervention, whether it's self-care, therapy, rest, or talking to someone you trust, makes all the difference. Ignoring the cracks doesn't make them go away, it just lets them grow. The key takeaway? Failure in life is rarely sudden. It's not one dramatic moment that causes everything to fall apart. It's a series of small pressures, neglected issues, and unattended cracks stacking up over time. The sooner you notice the signs, the sooner you can reinforce your internal structure. Adjust your mix, strengthen your core, give yourself the support you need. Because just like concrete, your strength isn't about looking perfect on the outside. It's about maintaining internal integrity, so when stress comes, and it will, you don't suddenly collapse. You bend, adjust, and keep standing. So if you felt moments of strain or overwhelm lately, don't panic. It doesn't mean you're failing. It means it's time to look inward, notice the cracks, and take action before they grow. The most important lesson from concrete? Failures are rarely accidents. They're warnings. They're signs to pay attention. Fix the small cracks before they become catastrophic. That's how real strength is built.